let's actually start off with introducing ourselves. I don't know how we want to introduce ourselves. Any way we feel we want to. Yeah, that's how we roll. Can I have his paper? I
got called out for somebody that was reading Creed recently, and he was like, man, I was reading, and this one guy, I really liked his post, he was talking about you, he was like, I'm a father, and I'm this, and he's like, no, I'm really reading Khalila's, and she's like, I'm this, and I'm that, and she's like, no, I read yours, and it was just like, I remember leaving as a teacher. He's like, maybe you need to take a page out of like Vincent's book, or like Khalila's, just have like a more human biography, so that's what I'm gonna go for now. I'm gonna mess it up. I'm gonna let you guys go first. And then
no, you're gonna actually, because we're gonna put that in.
Erin Dunleavy.
So yes, introduce yourself.
Oh, me first, really?
Okay. Yeah. White people first.
White people first. We do center white. First of all, not only am I sitting, but centering myself, and I'm going first.
Like put the white woman on blast.
The white woman on blast.
You know this is gonna be on YouTube, right? Okay.
I want one of those blurry faces.
And your voice.
She's coming to testify.
Like a monster voice. Say, can you do that? Get that monster voice out. My name is Erin, and I am a friend of Khalila's. Right? You want to put friend first.
Yes, please
right?
put friend first.
I'm a friend of Khalila's.
My only white friend, my mom. You saw my mom give me the little tap on my hand when I said it. She was like, shh, Khalila. I was like, she knows she's white.
I'm so happy to meet Mom. And a restorative justice practitioner. I'm really happy to be here.
And she's hood as hell, but you'll figure that out later.
Certified white girl.
And then introduce yourself.
And I'm Vincent Dees. I don't even know how to describe myself at this whole stage. But to certify Erin, she is one of my new white friends. I have a few. She's definitely made it certified, stamped and sealed. I do work around mentoring, writing. I'm a part of the Creed family. I don't know. I'm here with the boss lady today.
And I am Khalila Brand. I don't know. These are my two friends who I love dearly. And we have Zendele, who is our tech. She is every woman. It's all in her.
Hi, everyone.
And so we're here at the Creed's first podcast. And this podcast came out of a conversation with Erin around operationalizing friendships.
Over eggs, bacon, and butter. Kayla was like, had the computer, and she was like, I just need you to read something real quick. And I like turned the shit around. What do you think about this? And it was this like very formal, deeply academic email to Khalila about someone who's going to write a paper and an article and publish it on operationalizing Black and white friendship. Khalila, I think you said that was the whitest shit you had ever
That is the whitest shit I've ever heard.
It's like white people.
It was like
we even ruined friendship. And I love friendship.
Yeah.
And I talk about friendship all the time. Like, I'm always thinking about friendship and what friendship means. And I'm like, man, you're ruining friendship for all.
I was reading when you wrote that corny ass title. I was like, she told me we was just going to talk about white people. I might not come to the library today.
The title is Operationalizing Friendships. A colleague of ours had this really great idea. I spoke to her about it afterwards. Had this really great idea about helping white people figure out how to be friends with people of color, aka Black people, because they may know how to be friends with like white Latinos and like white Asians, but the struggles with Black people. And so I don't even know. The conversation came up between Erin and it came up between Vincent and I about getting our ideas down on record. Like writing is one thing, but also being face to face and talking through some things is another thing. And so we decided we'd have like the white girl, the militant Black girl, and the hood as hell Black dude come together and do a podcast for educators.
And that was something that came up after a lot of our trainings together I'd be like, how did you guys become friends? Was that hard? What did you do? It's like I slipped you a $20 bill and I got like my friend for this presentation so that folks think we can do it.
So for me, I think that day at, what was that, BK Law, when I seen you present for the first time, I was like, let me see if this white girl is certified. And then I think at one point she was like, yes, and it was like a hood yes. I was like, I think I texted Khalila right away, like, your friend is my friend. Take it, Mary. She's down with the squad.
That day I got a text message from someone who was in the room, and they were like, so Khalila, you got replaced by a blonde, blue-eyed, skinny white girl. And I was like, yes, but she's I love her. Like, give her a chance. She's real.
That was a sad day.
And they were like, nah. But by the end of the session, they were like, she aight, but I don't know how they thought they could replace you with a white girl, though. I said, she's not there to replace me.
They weren't the only ones who felt that way. Every time I saw Vincent in the hallway, I was like, I don't want to be here right now without Khalila by my side.
See, but that was one of those moments because if every black person in the room was not with it that day, I was here for it all. I was like, you doing your thing, girl. Fuck it up. Like, go back in there and get them. No, it was good work. Definitely. It was like you said, it wasn't really there to replace her. You brought a whole different flair that the room appreciated. I spoke to people afterwards. We always gauge people, get them little evaluations. Like, you like that or not? They're like, no, that white girl was good.
I'm kind of a blackout talker. You know how people like blackout drink, and I don't blackout drink anymore, but I blackout talk, so I don't remember what I said. So, like, I'll come out like talking for 2 hours, and be like, huh? So, like, wake up on the side of the road. And I said something cool. Good.
Come out the room like it's going good. I can't push through. Here we go.
See, and while you two were at that session, I was meeting with the same white woman who wanted to operationalize friendships. We were having breakfast at Cheryl's talking about her failed operationalizing of her friendship with her black friend, Ebony.
But who took her to Cheryl's? Did you take her?
I took her to Cheryl's. I need a place. I take everybody to Cheryl's. White people allowed in Cheryl's, and she's cool. She's cool. But you two were having that experience, and I was sitting with her, and she was telling me how her conversation with her operationalizing with her friend Ebony, that they're no longer friends.
It's like, Ebony, no.
I didn't blame her. You know, you told me about that breakfast afterwards, and I think from what you told me, I only heard your side. You were really loving around.
No,
you really were. Like,
I like
you
her.
had a lot of room for error.
And she might listen to this, and you know who you are. I like you, and I think that breakfast made me like you more than I liked you before.
Yeah.
That was a really good breakfast, and we still keep in touch. She texted me, but I haven't returned it. That's like 3 weeks ago. But I'm gonna return your text if you listen to it. By the time this is on there, I'm gonna return it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm gonna have more than one white friend, maybe.
Well, I think the point is that to think about the phrase operationalizing friendship manages somehow to suck the humanity out of the most humane interaction between people since the beginning of time. Like, how is it possible to suck the love and soul out of a concept like friendship except to attempt to operationalize it?
That's like the HR term. It's like with the white girl in the office, she feels attacked. They're like, we're going to come in now, we're going to operationalize all of the friendships, guys.
Exactly.
We're going to really get this up. No, Dan. Go back to HR.
Right.
She'll be okay.
Right.
I don't even know. I mean, I think that I'm friends with you because you're real. And I don't have to do extra work to be friends with you. I don't have to think hard about what I'm gonna say. Is it gonna offend you? I can talk to you like how I talk to Zenzele and Vincent, to like all the black people I love. I can just talk to you that way, and then we just talk through whatever misunderstandings. No, I keep it real with you. And I think though, with other white people, they're so fragile. They're so freaking fragile that everything you say to them, they're like, you don't need me though, do you?
Right.
I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Well, that's that tightrope, right? that choosing safety over life that James Baldwin talks about. You're always afraid to fall, even though if I'm speaking with someone of color and I feel the urge to like funk out my resume and be like, page 1, why I'm awesome, and let me read this to you, like, you know, when I'm doing that, I know something's wrong with me. Like it happened recently, and we're gonna, I think, talk a lot about white supremacy in the way that, like, as a white person, I mean, it's something that you're working against embodying white supremacy, but it's not something that you do and that's done. And you're like, close the book, I did it, I'm an anti-racist now, welcome to the world, me, right? It's something that you're thinking about all the time, and one of the ways that white supremacy manifests is that I feel the need to prove myself and check off boxes and, be a perfectionist. So if I'm feeling defensive, that's something that I gotta look at, and it might be challenging, right? Like we know, challenging a belief or something wrong. I need to be saying thank you, or I need to be saying, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. If I'm saying no, but let me tell you about, hold on, page 43, subclause A, I had dinner with my black friend Khalil last night, and then I got a problem, even if it's true. If my urge is to show you my receipts to prove myself to you, then I'm not listening deeply.
I agree, but I think I think all humans go through that when you feel like you're doing work, or like you feel like you're being genuine and people start to question it, or like you're trying to certify or solidify yourself in a new space. You kind of want to be like, I belong here, I know what I'm doing. So I don't want white people to be like, oh, here's what I did, and here's my best friend, and here's this and here's that. But I can't get too close to you before I feel like, I don't know, I just can't get too close. But moving on, let's talk about some things that are happening in the news or politics in the classroom. So September 15th started Hispanic Heritage Month. I don't know, I'm gonna take a gander around the room. Like, who knew about Hispanic Heritage Month? Ever celebrated it in school, talked about it, did anything? Vincent?
And I went to school like in Brownsville with like, if you wasn't black, you was Spanish. Nope. I learned about that from Creed.
He said if you weren't black, you were Spanish. Yeah, say something, because Spanish is a language.
To your partner.
No, I mean, I grew up in the Bronx, so that's what I do. I'd be like, you Spanish. People be like, it's a language. I'm like, oh, okay. You Puerto Rican and Dominican?
And it's natural, like you don't even think about it, you're like, wait, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's so, the way that we speak about Hispanic or Latinos or however, even that, like figuring out, is it Hispanic, is it Latino, is it Puerto Rican, is it like what it is, the way that we marginalize that section of our society, especially you grew up in Brownsville, I grew up in the Bronx, and like, I don't know, Spanish people were black. Like, we were the same thing. There was no difference. I just knew that your mom didn't speak no English, so I needed to figure out what she was going to say. Like, when she called me. Like,
and a lot of the confines, like the way in which you grew up, because like even like when you think about like that marginalized group of like Latino people, like that's like the same thing for Africans, right? Like you hear people talk about Africans, and it's like, yeah, they're just African. Like, they're 52, like they're
mad countries in Africa.
Right? Yeah, so like when you see all of my, like growing up, I see like Latino people, and I'm like, you speak Spanish? So you are Spanish, my friend.
And then we
have later on, you gotta, it's always about your friend group, right? Like who are you around? Because even like growing up in neighborhoods like that, like I chilled with black people. It was like one Spanish dude or two who had a good jump shot. His Nikes were extra clean, and I wanted the secret, right? But like other than that, no. Like we kind of stayed in our peer groups. And then
Bronx, when I grew up in the '80s, they were just more Puerto Ricans and Dominicans than anything else. So it was like my first boyfriend was Jordani. Hello, Carlos, Frank. Like I didn't have a black boyfriend until like junior year in high school. All my girlfriends were either Puerto Rican or Dominican, and so it was just, we were just the same. They just spoke Spanish,
right?
And they ate the same foods I ate. So like, I felt like I was from the Caribbean, they were from the Caribbean. I mean, I knew that there was a difference, right? I knew that there was a difference, duh. You know what I'm saying? I know there was a difference. I'm not trying to make it seem like it was all great. There was a lot of drama, right? I'm a dark-skinned black woman, so there was a lot of shade, but I didn't really learn anything about Latino culture, Hispanic culture, nothing in K through 12 or my 4 years at City College. Never taught anything about Hispanic Heritage Month in most of my 10 years as a teacher. I taught world history, so of course I ducked into South America a little bit, right? But it wasn't until we started Creed last year, I took it upon myself to investigate, like, what was Hispanic Heritage Month?
Yeah.
Why the hell did it start on September 15th? That didn't make no sense to me. Like, what holiday starts in the middle of the month? That was stupid. Go to Creed and find out why it starts on September 15th. It's not stupid. But then I also did a lot of research on these countries that were celebrating their independence for Hispanic Heritage Month and looked at it from a diasporic lens, right? Looked at it from, we all got dropped off at different places, and more enslaved Africans were dropped off in South America than were in North America.
Right.
South America and the Caribbean has the largest amount of generations of formerly enslaved people.
Right. I'm going to out myself. I'm going to take Khalila's advice. She says get ahead of the story, right, so that it doesn't burn you in the end. So I'm just going to air myself out right now. So I am the white Spanish teacher. I was a white Spanish teacher for 14 years in the New York City Department of Education. Look me up, Erin Dunleavy, the Irish white Spanish teacher. I'm sure there's a million of us, actually. But what I'm thinking about...
Do you speak Irish?
No.
I was like, it's Irish, right?
I got a couple phrases.
Like, it is Irish, right?
When I used to at the bar, you'd hear me speaking fluent Gaelic.
I was like,
you were right. We call it Irish.
oh, praise God. I was like, this moment of ignorance was brought to you by
Not at all.
shit.
Not at all.
Latinos are Spanish and...
Well, that's what I was going to talk about, though. Thinking about what Vincent was just saying, I know early on, and like my white supremacy was really on some other level, I think, just in that left wing kind of, I had just come back from South America, I knew everything, what my hair would have been, I know there's pictures of me with cornrows somewhere. It's gonna pop out and somebody on Creed's gonna be like, block everything, she's never posting again. I just put that out there, like saying this right into the mic, like if that floats around, I'm sorry.
I was young.
But I would have corrected, and I work with native Spanish speakers, right? So I worked with in native language arts. And I would have corrected young people, young Latinos, who would refer to themselves or identify as Spanish themselves, and I would have corrected them. No, that's not how you identify. You're not Spanish, you're this. And think about that interaction in and of itself, of the sort of like, the white supremacy that tells someone, no, that is not who you are. That is not the correct term for you to identify yourself with. So what I'm thinking about when I think about, Hispanic Heritage Month, we would start off that, the year together. It's a great time to be working with native Spanish speakers in that year. Usually I'd have kids from 6, 7, 8 Spanish-speaking countries. And my first question would be like, well, how would your life be different if you were living in your country of origin? And then you build into, and you use kind of a circle to talk about that. And it's unbelievable kind of how the stories would emerge in sort of like this really beautiful way, where a lot of what would come forward is that no matter where you were in your country of origin, there was a sense of community. You could kind of go into any neighbor's house, and this kind of, and coming here brought sort of a loneliness or an isolation. That was like a recurring theme that would come out over the years of kind of using this process to start Hispanic Heritage Month, and we would find these beautiful connections to the diaspora, and then asking young people how they want to identify. And have them tell us what it means to be, what does Spanish mean to you? Maybe someone says, it means we all speak Spanish. There's people from 7 countries in here. We all speak the same language. There's 21 countries, plus that speak Spanish as their native language. And so for us as white folks and white identified educators to go in and correct young people, especially, we have a lot of Spanish speakers in the New York City Department of Education, a lot in our schools, to tell them that that's not how you identify, that's not who you are, is really problematic. We need to start asking, and start telling me why we use the word Spanish and not Hispanic, or why a young person, they'll say I'm 100% Boricua, and they're 3 generations here. What that means to them and why that's the story. I think that's really important.
It's so funny because you say, white identified educators need to not tell people what they're. When I speak to black teachers and ask them, have you ever taught Hispanic Heritage Month or anything about it, or just engage in it, they say, no, I don't feel comfortable. And I'm always like, I don't. See, I was a history teacher, so I can get comfortable real quick. I just start reading. I just start doing an investigation and figure it out. But I think that there is this disconnect, though we like to say black and brown or blacks and Latinos, and we like to say the connection, that there is still this disconnect when it comes down to celebrations. So in one of the upcoming posts, one of our Creed members is writing a post about trying to engage in a conversation about race and power with her Black and Latino students, and her Latino students saying, well, I don't get it because I'm not Black. And her kind of being like, I don't even know what to say to that, right? I think sometimes we get so smart and intellectual. So I know when I said to Vincent, they're not Spanish, that's a language. That is like my intellectual, trying not to be like dismissive.
Right.
That's like my intellectual self coming on saying, no, Spanish is a language, it's not a group of people, right?
Or you're from Spain.
Yeah.
Or you're from Spain, right? Or you're Caucasian, so you come from the Caucasus Mountains. Everybody's white.
Yeah.
But I think what you just said helps me to remind myself that sometimes we have to balance like this intellectual, very academic understanding of things with what is it on the ground and the realities of things.
Well, and I just mean for white folks, we need to stop telling people of color what they are or who they are. That's just fundamentally at the root cannot be a part of our practice as teachers, to be telling anybody this is who you are and what you are. I can open doors and we can explore things together, but also, and you and I have talked about this, whiteness loves to learn something new and close the door of learning, slam it shut right behind itself. So I learned the word Latinx and I'm like, it's actually not Latino, that's very masculine, it's Latinx. You learned that shit 6 months ago. Act like you knew that forever. You didn't know that forever. Everything we know, we didn't know forever, and we bring with it, I'm talking we, I'm always talking about we, right?
Yeah.
We love to do that. We love to do that.
And then doubling down on that, it's like, so that white people shouldn't tell people how to self-identify, but then also diasporic people need to explore larger conversations around identifying, right? Because like I think of my upbringing, right? Like I was told I was Black.
Right.
So even right off the bat, I don't see connections with Latino people or people of or even Caribbean people. We have these conversations all the time. The hardest conversations I have are with like Black and Caribbean people. I'm like, that shit y'all doing is foolish, right? And y'all are all diasporic, right? And so those are always things, because when you start having conversations with people, and like when I think of like classes with like Hispanic kids or classes with like African American kids, if we make diasporic connections early, then we really build in a capacity for those conversations to mean something. So that way the celebratory piece of it is like inviting, because even like thinking about those pieces, like even knowing I was Black, like I was always good with Juve. I was like, and chicken is a little bit spicier, but they letting me rock. And it's those things that now you start bringing people in, and then they start understanding and caring a little bit more about your culture. So that way these pieces are not just because, even when we talk about like months dedicated to certain pieces, it's like this shit is all year. We do not want to, but this is the time that's been regulated for it in school spaces.
And so you bring up 2 good points. I mean, one of the goals of Creed is to, it's culturally responsive educators of the African diaspora. And I was intentional of African diaspora because I would let you decide if you are a part of that diaspora.
That's right.
Like you get to decide if this is what you want to be a part of versus me telling you you're a part of it.
Right.
But I think that even doing that, like you said, Vincent, teachers have a lot of work to do. Black, white, Puerto Rican, or Haitian have a lot of work to do in even resetting their minds on how do I create a classroom space that honors the diaspora. Because one of the things that happened when I was at City College, I remember us sitting during club hours and everybody from all these different islands, and we were just talking about when you send a barrel back home before you go home. You gotta send the barrel because you need to send food and you need to send all these things. And don't take your good stuff home because you gotta keep, when you go there, all your family and friends are gonna take the good stuff so you don't take your Jordans because you ain't coming back with your Jordans because your cousin will be like, those are nice. You're like, go ahead, take them. And I remember having this moment being like, yo, we are all from the diaspora. People were from the continent of Africa, people were from the Caribbean, people were from South America, but we all understood what it meant to send that barrel home before you got there.
Right.
And we all understood our music and everything had this connection, but that doesn't take place in the classroom. Our classroom is so centered in whiteness and so anti-Black that I think that thinking about things from a diasporic place is a good start. And then when I was a teacher, I'd be like, I'm not celebrating none of these fake holidays. right? And I have a lot of regret around that. Now, I talk from a black perspective because I'm mad black, right? But, you know, I was one of those teachers that was like, no, I don't celebrate Black History Month. I teach it all year round. But what I realized traveling around the country is that might be the only time people get anything.
Right.
And there is a reason why these things are dedicated to this time and space. That there has to be an intention. I mean, the goal is to decenter whiteness, period,
Right.
in our education and the way that we work. But, as we work towards that, we need to also center other identities and other people at the time that is given.
So I think exploration of identity for adolescents, I mean, and that's my area of experience, right, and expertise. I never worked in elementary school, but I know that being a teenager, like, think about the young person that you worked with who got locked into an identity that they couldn't escape from, and you'd know who they really are, and the inside wasn't matching the outside, right? Mm-hmm. Like the person, and you'd see them kind of locked into this version of themselves that wasn't bringing them joy and happiness. Mm-hmm. And so in adolescence and high school, more than any other place, not just because it is the primary way we decolonize our schools is by constantly and beautifully, bravely exploring identity in our classrooms and connecting that to content. That to me is the essence of CRE. That's the essence of culturally responsive education. Tell me who you are and I will help us connect who you are to what it is that we are teaching and learning in here. But it's so essential just for the mental health and well-being of adolescents. Like, they need opportunities to constantly look at themselves and, you know, I like to say, turn it over like an ancient stone. Like, look at who you are. Maybe they're afraid of identifying as diasporic early on in the year, but if you continuously bring this exploration up with questions, not answers, and through the beauty of poetry or art or mathematics or whatever it is that you're teaching, and constantly kind of join the hand of that child and the content through these questions about identity, you're going to watch young people unlock and feel more free. And then the kid who doesn't want to have to be in this group of friends anymore, or doesn't want to have to be, you know, the class clown, or the kid who is long-term absence, or the kid, you know, or even the kid who, like, is whatever, you know, a sports kid. You don't want to get locked. You want to feel free. And I watch young people get locked so much in high school.
And a lot of that, I think, is just the fact that as people, especially as we go through like our collegiate career and everything like that, people become like less self-reflective. So then we become more rigid, more tight people. And then we impose that same will on our kids, right? As pedagogues, we get kids in spaces and it's just like, no, you're going to be exactly what I'm telling you to be.
That's right.
How I tell you to be. And it's like, oh, you were just going through that reflective space yourself. Like, you're getting conditioned to then condition people to not be themselves. It's like, come on, like, let the kids live. Like,
I mean, I find
I should cry right now.
Podcast. Let the kids live.
That is the new name.
That is the new name of the podcast. Creed, let the kids live.
Can the kids live?
Okay, that's the title of the episode. Then it's like, I got this. This is the name. This is the In talking about letting the kids live, I want to talk about this week in oppression in schools. We had a 6th grader, I think it's in Detroit, who decided that he was going to activate his First Amendment right and not stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I said Pledge of Allegiance. I said Detroit, but it's in Michigan. So he decided that he was going to sit. Next thing you know, so let me set the stage. He's in the classroom. There's a consultant in the classroom. Erin and I are consultants, who is there to help the teacher deal with classroom management and environment.
It wasn't me, I swear. That is literally what I do for a living.
That's literally what we do. So the young man says that he was sitting down, not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, when the teacher consultant comes up behind him and snatches him out of his chair violently. The kid said he was so confused, he didn't know what was going on. And he says, I don't stand for the pledge because I don't pledge to a flag. I pledge to God and my family. And now this young man says he doesn't feel safe going to school. And the teacher involved in the incident has been placed on administrative leave. I mean, I just felt like this was a good connection to can we let the kids live?
And so when I first read the article, I was thinking about, especially in the piece that I'm creating, I'm thinking about like the way in which like, teachers, like you get that role, you get your attendance, and you look at these names. You're trying to learn them so you don't mess them up, but you look into like one of these, like, who is Mustafa? Oh, he gonna be a little problem child. So I read the name, I was like, Stone Chaney. Oh, I would have read his name on the roll. I'm like, that little boy ain't fucking around. He is not standing when he don't want to. He's false about it. And then I'm reading further, I'm like, wait, did she just grab him up? Like, as an adult, that is just like...
Was it a she, or you just going to the fact it's a she? Because I don't see any designation.
Let me see.
I don't see any designation.
All right, let's notice our own implicit understandings. Did anybody else picture this teacher as a white woman? Are we?
I thought of a white man.
Okay.
I didn't think that a white woman, the consultant who was the first one to accost him, I do not see a white woman accosting a black boy in this way. Verbally, yes. Physically, she might catch it. She might catch a fair one. So I don't see that. I don't see that, right? Now the consultants, I think they are really good, right?
Yeah, they definitely
there is no designation. Mess around, it could be a black person, because I done caught a fair one. Like I've gotten into kids' faces. But because it's the pledge, that's a white person.
Yeah,
it's the pledge. That's a white person. Come on. If I'm wrong, I'm strong in my wrongness.
And especially because getting grabbed up by white people at any extent is just throws a brother off. You're like, what the fuck? It don't even gotta be just in class for not standing for the pledge. You can be like in Starbucks. If white people just grab black people up out of nowhere, we're just thrown off. That shit does not work with us. So I'm just like,
I didn't think like Vincent thought that it was a woman. I did too. I thought it was a woman.
I didn't think it was a woman. That's what my mom was.
Yeah. Nah, in this incident, like I can see, because I have been a woman that has gotten into a physical altercation with a student, like there has to be some build up. Like there's some build up. This was just like, I'm not moving. But I thought to myself, I had wrote a post when we came back from Labor Day saying something like, listen, I did a training, and I was like, listen, by the time I come back to y'all in October, I'm going to have 18 examples of white people and white peopling and educators doing crazy shit. And they were like, no. I was like, watch. And so I'm just collecting my PowerPoint presentation from when I saw them on August 31st to when I see them in October. Just be like, and then this happened, and then this happened. Another thing happened. Mom says school taped students' wrists, put them in a dark room for slavery lesson.
Oh.
And this was out in California. So I was confused by this. I was like, it ain't slavery time yet. It's just September. How do we start off with slavery in September?
They've been doing the assignment for 10 years.
Wow.
They've been planning this for, no.
This wasn't like a new thing.
No, this wasn't the pilot. This was up and popping before this shit was going.
The title that the mom got of the email was Unique Learning Experience to inform parents of an upcoming exercise that would supposedly expose students to the horrors of slavery. The lesson would involve the teachers acting as slave ship captains and students as slaves. Specifically, when class starts, the email reads, we will sternly tell them to line up outside of the classroom. What's different than regular school? Use masking tape to tie their wrists together. Make them lie on the ground inside the room. See, now my first problem is black people don't get on the ground. We don't do this ground shit. So, I'm not doing, I got my new clothes on. I know, I'm being tangential, but really, my mom didn't play with the room, which will be dark, shoulder to shoulder with each other. Boys and girls are in separate rows. And then while they lay there, have them watch a clip from Roots.
That was the part that had me. I was just like,
Jesus, Joseph.
It's like, that must be a really great clip that you're going to get the whole. I was like, what?
Have you never seen Roots?
No.
I'm just asking. Some black people haven't seen Roots. Erin, have you seen
can't
Roots?
see the look that Vincent just gave Khalid.
Erin, have you seen Roots?
Yes.
I'm just asking.
Oh, yes.
I was just, when I read it, I was just like, oh my God, a clip of Roots saves the day every time, right? No.
I
know Roots.
I don't. And see, so coming back to your question from the last one, the race of this, I would say this might be a black person.
I would agree.
So my guess was white person on the last incident because we know about the ways that white folks, but especially white women, over-adultify young black men. So it's by like 8 or 9 that white women perceive black boys, children, as men and therefore physically threatening. So someone who, a young person who mouths off a little bit or something, it's seen as a threat to their life because they've adultified this young person and they fear them, like fear that anything they say or do is a physical threat to their life. So pulling a kid out of a chair for peacefully saying, I refuse to salute the flag for these beautiful and thoughtful reasons in 6th grade, like, where is this kid and how do we get him on the podcast?
Mm-hmm.
But, at the end of the day, that kind of response tells me that you were threatened somehow physically almost, like if we need to get violent with a kid, and we know that white women, just because it's been studied, and I think we should probably pull that up for the next time and take a look at that in a deeper way, but feel physically threatened by young men specifically, but children of color.
Go ahead, Vincent.
Oh no, yeah, I was just with Erin, especially with the fact that I just imagine a woman like, oh, you are not gonna Colin Kaepernick in my class, little boy. But like that's why I don't know, like it just, and so I guess in that vein, it could be a white male. But I don't know. I was just thinking of like a white female teacher that was just not having that shit.
I've just found that white men just get so fucking angry anytime a black human asserts. I'm not saying that white women don't, but I just find that they take it so friggin' personally. So like even if you saw the Detroit Lions game during the Pledge of Allegiance, this black couple sat down and this white dude took a picture and was like, these niggas, if you're not happy, go back to Africa, whatever like that. Like I'm sure white women were around looking, but it was this white dude who decided that he was so enraged. Even when we start talking about Charlottesville and in Creed, we did a whole week of posts on Charlottesville. There were white women there, and there were 1 or 2 or 3 really good pieces about like white women. This is you too, white women. Like y'all married to these dudes, you mother these dudes. These are your boyfriends. But what I remember seeing from Charlottesville was just this white men being so enraged at the thought of black people asserting their humanity in front of them.
And you hear the words ego and entitlement constantly. The narrative that I hear from white male teachers is this kid has such an ego. Let me tell you about the ego in this kid. Let me tell you, this kid he walks in 10 minutes late, like he owns the place. Mm-hmm. It's a public district school, he does own the place. And he acts like he's entitled to just walk in and sit down. He is. It's a civil right. He is literally entitled to come in at any time and sit down whenever the hell he wants, wherever he wants. That is his civil right. But noticing that anger you're talking about, I've said to a white teacher who is in that kind of narrative, and you watch their faces. And I get red face myself when I'm angry, so I cannot hate. But you watch the face get red, you watch like the blood pressure go up. I've had to say to men like, I'm genuinely worried about you right now. Like, can we change this? Let's talk about something else. Let's just go, maybe we'll have something to drink, like a tea or something like that. You're about to have a heart attack. You're literally going to have a stroke. Because you're talking about how Jaquan walked in 10 minutes late to your class with the ego and the entitlement. And that narrative comes up over and over and over.
I think the cross-section of that, because one, as being one of these black people who like lost their temper so much that I got into an altercation with a kid, and then also seeing those same things happen with black male and female teachers. I think that there's an overlap, there's a cross-section that is really the fruit of education, where you are told as a teacher, like, you're in charge, you rule, you own, you run, you get to do, everybody must submit to you, and if they don't, you're a poor teacher. Because on the same end, black male and female teachers get equally angry. I've had that same conversation about Jaquan coming in late, giving everybody pounds, being disrespectful, and his goddamn pants hanging all low, and he smells like weed, and he won't take off his hat, and the person who's staring back at me is a black man or a black woman, who I think is dealing with like real anger and real pain at the same time, and our current form of education doesn't give us a place where we like learn how to see the humanity in kids.
That's right. We prioritize systems over humans.
Yeah.
And then just from my own experience, just being like the only male in the room, I remember like all of my experiences with teachers, I was never worried about the male teachers. I feel like male teachers know extremely when it's gonna go down that you gotta shoot the fade with me. Like, there's no way you're gonna touch me innocent. But female teachers always happen to be the ones, and it was, I mean, I had mostly black female teachers, but yeah, they always pulled the mama role with me. Like, get your little ass up, get it, like, what, miss, why are you, I used to regularly have to let teachers know, like, miss, I have an older sister. She'll come for you. Don't touch me. And so especially when I think of that situation, I just feel like, I don't know, and I think of a lot of the situations they play out. I think always, as people of color, white people, it's always a challenge dealing with some badass kids. Like, kids that got their own attitudes, that they come in with their own selves. That's hard to manage, because you're your own person. We wake up on the wrong side of the bed, they wake up on the wrong side of the bed, it's gonna go down in the first period. And then especially,
they're not gonna be in first period.
Well,
so
yeah.
like fifth. Fourth and fifth. They ain't gonna be in first.
Second and third. Fourth or fifth, you come for a fifth, we ain't coming. Got better shit to do by fourth and third. But yeah, it's just checking yourself, right? Because like you said, teachers in front of the classroom, we don't want to let no kid do anything that we ain't giving you like actual leeway to do. And then when you double down on the fact that, like you said earlier, letting kids be kids, like having that like these kids are managing all types of emotional changes. Like they're really going through shit at like 14 through 18 is like a weird ass stage.
Well, you could go all the way back to 12 because
12 is crazy. Yeah, middle school is crazy.
But I think also, we neglect that our young teachers are going through things. When I got into an altercation with a student, I was like 25, right? Middle-aged teachers, like humans in general, we're going through these things, but there is no space and place for that going throughness. Right. And then there's no...
Except the bar on Friday.
Yeah.
We do like 2:30 in the afternoon on Friday, like at the bar next door to the school, like... bartender be wiping the bar, here they are. We're open till 3, come on. But
you know what's so funny?
Absolutely right.
At my last school, all the white teachers went to one bar and all the black teachers went to a different bar.
Oh, it was the same at SBC when I got there, and we worked really hard to end that. Because it was 2 separate happy hours, segregated happy hours.
I did not work hard to end it because I wanted a safe space. Yeah, edit out her.
Sorry.
Okay.
Put them on blast.
My administrator asked me to try to end it, but I was the only black person who was an administrator. Everybody else was white. I was like, man, I'm gonna go to the white bar and be like, hey, and then head over to the black bar and just relax.
Right.
So it was really hard, but that's when we come back to operationalizing friendships. Like, I don't even want to drink with you because when white people drink, they say shit. They just, you be like, we ain't that cool. Like, I don't fuck with you like that. We not that good.
Right. I mean, that's all people when they drink. I think that's...
Yeah, but that white shit.
The worst piece about a school is that in schools where, like...
Zansley disagrees with
you.
No, of course. In the corner.
You should see the But in schools, especially places where they're like living, breathing people, there is no fucking humanity in schools.
That's right.
So then we expect that we can. So if I'm bumping past Erin all day in the hallway and I'm not gonna say shit to her, then yeah, at the bar she's gonna get drunk and say some shit that I'm not with, because we don't have no basis to we don't establish no real connections. Like I always, and it's not just with white people and it's black people in schools that don't be connected.
I agree. I want to shift back quickly to the school where the kids were learning about Black history by being taped up. Right, and just point out that in this district, and I want to know, I'm throwing this out to you because I want to know if this colors it. This district is predominantly Asian and Hispanic. Only 19 students, which is 2% are Black. And so then we have this experience. I need them to tell me why this experience is happening in September. Like, I don't even know you.
Start the school year?
I don't even know you. And it's in California, so maybe they started in August. But I don't even know you. Like, I don't remember all 30 kids in my classroom's name. Right. But the school there are 19 Black children in the high school. 2%.
And like you said earlier, an educator of color made them do this. This is some moments where you want to. I don't know how I'm gonna go out like we did trying to guess guess about the last one, this had to be an educator of color. Like this is, I don't know, like I feel like it'd be some bold ass white people. We know you compile all of the good stories with the AK riddles and shit like that. But I don't know, like I just feel like this was an educator of color.
And maybe that's why it took 10 years for some parents to be outraged. Because we don't, people of color, even, I'm getting tired of that term, people of color. People of color don't even really fuck with each other, right? Like, we don't want to call minorities, so we say people of color, but Black, Asians, and Latinos, we got a lot of work to do. So in a school that's predominantly Latino and Asian, I can see a disconnect from the activity.
Yeah.
So that you could just intellectualize the activity and be like, oh, slavery was bad, roots is old, right? Whereas this kid's mom, and this kid might be the only Black person in the, oh my gosh, in the classroom. And the reason why I say that I think this is a Black person is because I had this experience in high school, 11th grade. Mr. Johnson, one of the best history teachers I've ever had, he simulated something for us, but he was Black, we were Black. There was a lot of love. It was like at the end of the school year, like it was all of these things that went into play that made it a profound experience for me. It made me want to become a history teacher. Right? That this similar experience, he threw us in the closet, had the way he didn't throw roots on, but had like the sounds of water, and there was a narration. It made me want to teach history and learn history and be a historian. And this is why it's so hard when you're like, what should a teacher do? Because I've had a similar experience that totally put me on the trajectory that I am on right now. This kid ain't gonna be put on this trajectory based on this. And there's something about safety. And just like,
I mean, this is a deeply traumatizing thing. I mean, it's really like we're gonna simulate a rape so that you know what a rape is. We're gonna simulate physical violence to the extent that it leads to genocide. We're going to simulate that with you. We're going to put you in a bed. We're going to tie you down. Can you imagine that happening? We don't see that connection here. I mean, like that to me is what makes me so deeply, deeply, deeply like saddened. And I mean, I don't even know how to kind of describe when this came out. You're thinking about what could possibly be the context, but what it tells me is that the way that white supremacy manifests in our schools is that it is so deeply disconnected to the dehumanization of Black and brown bodies. And it's so disconnected, because if you were going to say, so I'm going to tie you up and put you in a basement and simulate, human sex slavery, just add that component, people would be like, you will destroy someone psychologically doing something like that. And so I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know where to begin. And we got 10 years of this. That's 10 years of messaging the fact that this is so not inhumane that we can simulate it in a classroom with children on the first week of school.
I think because Paul Forbes shared this story with me, and one of my questions in my response to him on Twitter was just, this leads me to ask the question, how do we teach slavery? How do we teach it? Because I think everyone is uncomfortable with teaching it. And so we either don't, or we move it. The Texas textbooks have us saying that, Africans were born here as workers. we just gonna change it, and they were born here as workers. We just ignore it. We just say, we make it economic. It was the transatlantic slave trade, and it was for rum and sugar and just, humans were included in it, but it was really about economics. And it led me as a history teacher and a historian to go like, so how do we teach this? And how do we equip all teachers? Because teachers of color are floating in white supremacy too. Absolutely. Along with, my opinion, floating in deep levels of shame. I think one of the things, vast generalization about Jewish people is that they have like trained. I got this whole training thing from you, like exercise and built muscle. Build their muscle around the Holocaust. They've built their muscle. They start off really, really young. They control the narrative. They make their children and society like look at it. They write the story around it, and I don't think that they have any shame in it. On the other end, I think that Black people and diasporic people are filled with shame when it comes to slavery. Like, just carry that heavy shame. We ain't do nothing. You know, I think a part of it is we never teach all the ways that Africans resisted. We never teach all the ways that all the many rebellions that took place. We never teach those things. We just kind of take it, we just kind of engage in slavery as like this thing that we allow to happen to us.
Well, and when we do teach Black resistance, we teach it through the lens of pacifism.
Oh yeah, nonviolence.
Nonviolence, deep forgiveness, and never rebellion. And our schools are built, as you know, you and I talk about this all the time, on fear of Black rebellion.
Oh my goodness.
Deep fear of Black rebellion that looks like anything other than, I mean, think of this child who is peacefully protesting in his classroom. Yeah. Our fear of Black rebellion is so deep that we'll get violent with a child who is even using the principles that I'm sure in that school in 2 months down the road they're going to talk about Dr. King and peace.
Yeah, and he says, you know, I pledge to my family and to God. That's exactly the type of things that you say you want kids to do.
Once they have agency like that, and then you shut them down and actually put it into play.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue to what we're reading. What we are reading, what we have read, what we've been reading is Stamped from the Beginning. Can we get it on camera? Stamped from the Beginning. You see this thickness? Even Zenzele is reading Stamped from the Beginning. This 500-page monstrosity. No, monstrosity is bad. Of goodness.
Yes.
Of just like everything in life. So Stamped from the Beginning, the definitive history of racist ideas in America. I mean, let's just start off with our, I don't know, initials or lasting reactions from the text. Anybody could jump in.
The segregationist, assimilationist, anti-racist designations changed my life. I talk about saying from the beginning, people think I'm like really extra hyperbolic, over the top. Everybody's like, so tell me about that book that changed your entire life. You're a new, different person after reading Stamped from the Beginning. But I noticed that the assimilationist white supremacy manifests. I mean, it is a way that I've noticed in my own teaching practice. I can think of the ways that I embody that assimilationism, the way that still kind of works and manifests in all of us today. I cannot get over the idea of climate theory being a 3,000-year-old theory, and every contract that pays my rent is a school climate reform initiative. There's just, even that metaphorically, that idea blows my mind. And yet when we're at this Catholic school that we've worked at, where could you say that anything is more toxic or grotesque than the climate there? And it's not a climate reform initiative in this white identified Catholic community at all. It's only in communities of color where we're trying to change the climate. And that's Aristotle right there. If we can just take Black and brown bodies out of their inferior climates, we can get rid of
naturally inferior
behaviors.
Yeah. I think for me that stood out. I had this moment. I was taking my mom to the airport and I was talking to her about the new Jim Crow. And she came to my house and saw it on the bookshelf and she was like, "Can I read it?" And I was like, "Yes." I'm talking to her about the new Jim Crow and I had just finished the segregationist, assimilationist, anti-racist designation. You know, I'm West Indian, right? And I'm going on and on and I'm driving into the airport and my mom goes, "Oh my God, Khalila, I'm an assimilationist." I said, "Mommy, we all are. Mommy, we all are. It's okay. It's okay. After you finish the new Jim Crow, you can take about a year to read Stamped from the Beginning." She was like, "No, at dinner." She was like, "I don't know about that. I think I'm enough." But it was so cute to have my mom come to that place because I came to that place so many times in the book. Like, oh my God, that's assimilationist. Oh my God. Like. And I'm like blacker than black, I'm pro-black, like blackity black, noir black, and I'm still an assimilationist. And it's like so much work to really decolonize myself of that. You know, it's like constant, everything that I look at, I have to be like, whose eyes am I looking at this through?
Wow.
And I think we went and seen Evelyn Kendi in person at the Schomburg. I can't remember exactly what was the date. And I think the designation in the 3 categories is what really helps us, because like always thinking about what you say about receipts, I'm like, damn, we really gotta get on people, right? Because a lot of the things that we do inherently, like in our practices, are like, they're assimilation. It's like and it's like always like people saying more than just white people. They're like, oh, we're good people. Show me the anti-racist shit that you're doing and really push forward this agenda, right? Because when you read it, so like, especially how you spoke with your mother, I have all these conversations with my mom, and just working through with a lot of like the thought processes that because she was always like, why do you give white people such a hard time? I'm like, okay. I could answer that, but no. And then and she always talks about the burden that we place upon black people and just that whole space, right? And I'm like, yeah, we all got work to do. Like none of us are infallible in this whole space. Like we are all out here trying to learn and grow. I always tell people when we speak about this work with people, you got to be constantly reading, absorbing this material, internalizing it, and then putting it into practice, right? Like I don't even care about just the people who want to read it. Now you got to put this into play so you can really see what that looks like.
That is the heart. You know, we were talking about this, Erin and I. How do we operationalize? Operationalize them from the beginning. How does it become practice? Because it blows your mind. I spent 10 years as a global history teacher, like fawning over Aristotle and what's my dude who helped the foundation of
Plato?
Of democracy. Oh, I can't remember his name. But I'm like,
edit out me getting that wrong and it wasn't Plato.
we're gonna keep that in. Whatever. He'll come to me. So like as a historian, it's like, wow, history. From history, right? But then as a practitioner, it's like, okay, so what does this mean for how do I teach? How do I now teach history? Yeah. And how do I even have this conversation between assimilationist and anti-racist? And what does it mean to be a black anti-racist? Right? Because white people have their work to do. And black people have their work to do. And constantly, Erin and I are going back and forth in between like how or what that work looks like. Because sometimes I feel like you think that it's, only white people need to do this work. I'm like, no, white people need to do this work. And black people need to do this work, and people of color in general need to do this work. Because at the end, Kendi posits in the beginning and the end throughout that there is nothing wrong with black people.
Thank you. And that's what you're saying.
Nothing wrong with black people.
I'm so moved by what you're saying. Like it gives me chills to think about when you mentioned so beautifully like what lens, like what glasses do I have on? What lens am I seeing this world through? As educators, we need to think so deeply. And I was at just a training just the other day, and half of the day was about trauma-informed practice. And not only the assimilationist language, but this idea that Kendi posits for us from the entirety of this book, there is nothing wrong with black people. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with black people. Mm-hmm. The idea of framing education by seeing young people of color as traumatized is so dangerous, because we cannot continue as white folks, and this is anything that I'm talking about with white folks, and I want to put this on record, is something that I've made the mistake of embodying before, or doing, or made that mistake, and I can think of it and know how wrong it was, especially after I keep reading and keep, But we do not want to give other white folks and white educators more excuses to pathologize behaviors that aren't pathological of our young people of color. Yeah. First of all, I'm in a fellowship where we say this all the time. We're not doctors. Right? That's the number one thing we say. We do not go around diagnosing people at all. We back the hell away from that. We are not doctors. It's not like I'm saying you have this and you have this and the trauma-informed lens that we're seeing in schools now that's really sexy right now is like, what behaviors are you noticing that are traumatic? Yep. I had my hand up. I was like, is anybody in here a neuroscientist? Yep. Anybody in here a doctor? Yep. And you'll notice that it'll be like, I mean, he's going around, he's dapping everybody. I mean, he needs to be the center of attention because he's traumatized, because the center of attention. I'm like, you just pathologize a cultural behavior that's not pathological.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, we don't need another excuse to do that, and there's nothing, what if we just went into schools and the PD was, hey, there's nothing wrong with kids of color.
And so we had this mini conversation, and I agree 10,000% with everything Erin just said. And someone sent me an article where Kendi talks about how he doesn't believe in Dr. Joy DeGruy Leary's post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Okay.
And so, we started this conversation on the phone. We were like, stop it! Save it for the podcast! So I agree with all of that. Absolutely. Everything. And I agree that there's nothing wrong with black people. And I agree that and I think that there is something wrong. There is something wrong. And when we look at post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, there is an ever-present anger. There is a socialization towards inferiority. There are these things that are in our face. I experienced it as a child, as an adult. I see it in the media. I see it in everything that we're doing that then influences me to act a way, do a way, be a certain way. And so it's like, there's nothing wrong with black people, and there's something wrong with the environment and the society that has been crafted around making us feel like we are inferior.
Which is odd when I say that he kind of like pushed back against her in that way, because the beautiful part as you read Stan from the beginning is that as you get into it, it shows that reflective piece that black people do, right? Because he's coming for black folks that black folks love, right?
Right.
In a way that shows you yo, we all really need to be self-reflective in these pieces. We speak of the talented 10th and just these individuals, Dubois, and people that they were assimilationists and a lot of their mindset, right? We look at a lot of and we have these conversations all the time about black influential people, black political leaders and stuff. And a lot of the mindset, a lot of the work that we come to love as people in this generation is the shift that they made later in life, right? A lot of that early stage was really drowning in white supremacy and trying to carve out space.
And trying to prove to white people that you're good.
Always showing your receipts, and it's so that whole piece is for black people, I think as you read it, because I was reading a piece of my mother about the talented 10th, and she was okay. I'm following him now. So for him to push back against the girl was
But I think there's a space, right? So she talks about vacant esteem, anger, continuous anger, and racist socialization, internalized racism. So I'm from Antigua. I'm born in Antigua, right? And grew up my whole life with my family telling me, don't trust Jamaicans, don't trust Black Americans, don't trust who call Trinidadians, Trickadadians. Don't trust all of these black people, and then don't trust white people. But if you have to choose one person to align yourself with the white people. Yep. Because if you align yourself with the white people, you'll move further, right? That's wrong.
Right.
That is something wrong that we have to be able to dissect and pull out and be no, the white man's ice ain't colder because he's white. And so when Kendi says it, I think it's on this intellectual, academic way, which I'm with him.
Right.
And on the practical, everyday, being a black person, aiming to be a diasporic person, I see what Dr. Joy DeGruy speaks about and says, we got work to do.
I just want us to change the language, a little bit. So I had to look it up. Dr. Robert Ross, and he's a black neuroscientist I think he's based in Los Angeles in California. But he studies the impacts of trauma on the brain and is an expert on the brain, but only says trauma and resilience. He never says those things as separate from one another. So he's so I study trauma and resilience in people, and the ways in which trauma and resilience manifest in people. Because the same day that you do the first half of the day in schools and in education on trauma-informed teaching, your second half of the day will be about how to build grit and resilience in your young people of color. Because that is our cultural narrative, that not only are black behaviors inferior and a product of how black folks and people of color are broken, but that also they have no resilience. That is a hundreds and hundreds of year old.
But I think
like repackaging of like a laziness.
But
narrative.
I think that is so white centered and white facing, white supremacy centered and facing.
That kind of language. That's what I'm saying. So what we need to understand is that these behaviors that you talk about and that you identify so deeply with are behaviors of human thriving, survival, and resilience.
Absolutely, but it doesn't benefit us.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Absolutely, but and so I'm afraid that when we start
seeing
but
that with different lens, with different glasses. Take the broken people, inferior behaviors, change the climate glasses off, and put the resilience, human thriving, survival, understanding of the strength of existence, and put those glasses on and say, now what do we do?
To a point, no, not to a point. Yes, I think that is totally white facing. I think that black people have a different approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes to all of that, but that is for white people and their friggin'
that
craziness. That's for y'all supremacy, right?
Right.
But for us to build our community, for us to have our progeny be in a better place than we are, I don't know if that is the lens that we can look through. Yeah, I think we have to look through it, like, of course, look at it as resiliency, but when my family taught me to trust white people over black people, I get where that was resilient, but it has to stop.
Right.
I have to break it. I cannot have any other kids believing that that's the only way to make it, and for them to be like, Jamaicans are this, and Nigerians are this, and it can't work, right? So I can see it as a resilience tactic because it was needed. But we have to break it.
Right. I'm thinking, just more in terms of bringing it back to Creed and to this being a group of educators here. And when we're thinking about all of our work, every single one of us in this room works with people who work with young people. Definitely. And for me, it's two conversations. One, right, that's on a very deeply personal level and that resonates so deeply and makes so much sense. From a professional point of view, the way that we watch white supremacy reproduce itself in our schools, and back to Vincent before, like, how are we, like, let the kids live and watching them live, deeply watching them live. We want them to be happy and joyful, like, right? But you agree that to dismantle white supremacy in white people and to dismantle white supremacy in people of color
can take on different approaches.
I'm only usually, and I said this before, like, I'm talking.
You're like, how are we talking about white folks? How are we talking about white folks?
I would never in my life.
This is only white folks.
If I ever try to tell you how to manage your own trauma, just make sure that you show me the door and that the door hits me on the ass on my way out. Because I would never ever do that.
No, and I think that's where it gets crazy. That's where it gets, like, so messy, because I think that people of color need the same information, a different approach. A different approach.
And that's why the whole graph piece is so important. Like, because we think of, like I always tell you, think of, like, South Africa with apartheid, and it's not saying that they moved past that piece, right? But, like, after apartheid is, like, reconciliation, right? Like, we have to talk about this. In America, we get, like, so, like, I look at our schools and I just watch the way they mirror the sociality, like, that's happening around us. We get so pissy when race conversations doesn't happen right in school. Like, it don't happen right anywhere. Like, I step in places and I have people of color that are, like, looking around like, they're like, no, not the people of color, the other people. What do you mean? The white people?
Like, you can't even say white. You can't even say white.
So then we have, like, all of these professionals who intellectualize race.
Right.
And have these profound conversations that are really about nothing. Like,
and
so what it is that, so I work in spaces with people that we have these conversations around equity, power, and privilege. And it's like, let's go back to the race part, because y'all didn't get that, so we're going to get 10 conversations deep, and we done been fucked up because we didn't have a racial piece about it. And so when I look at it, and especially, like, this traumatic piece of, like, just the divides of, like, people of color, like,
black people hate each other.
They got some bad tendencies about the way we
and that has been passed down for generations. It has been out of necessity. It can be designed as resilience. However, it gotta stop.
And when we segment it and we have certain people think that the white people are who you then vie to, then we only deepen those divides and make white supremacy even more
stronger.
Yeah, because it's like now all of these people, because that is the in its evil geniuses, that is what you do. You build a distrust of people who have a genuine commonality, who come from this whole cultural piece, and then you just pit these people against each other.
And it's just like, oh, we can say something is racist, or a black person can say it, and you'd be like, oh, they're doing too much. Tim Wise say it, and you're like, oh, right, the white man said it's racist, so it must really be racist. Right. The black woman said it was racist, and she's a racist for saying it.
And it just works back to the conditioning piece, right? Because, like, especially in the space that we are as, like, writers, right, and content creators, like, sometimes once you've learned something so much, people are scared as shit to let that go. So in the spaces that we stand with, especially with black people, it's like, they're like, no, I've learned this all my life in history class. Fuck, history class lied to you. Shit was off, right?
And I got my receipts, read all these books.
Exactly. Because when you tell people the shit that they know is like crap, then they're like, but how do you? Because I have this 500-page book with 4 other books I'm reading right now, and it's all like, come on, like it's so.
And that's
really
true of anybody's experience at school. I have people tell me all the time, well, in my day, if I ever lipped off like that, I would have got, the principal would have come over and he would have beat me with a board, and I got, wrapped on the wrist with a ruler. And I'm like, well, you were abused.
And do you want that?
Exactly. Do you want your kids to have?
But that is the conversation I have with black people all the time.
And
like,
damn,
you want that for your kid? Right. You want that for your kids' kids? Like, that's what you want. But I think it's because most people have never seen it done. I've had the honor and the pleasure of working at Bushwick Community High School, and we don't have to edit that. And I've seen what it looks like to have a school that loves first and foremost, and loves black and Latino people unconditionally. Like, oh my God, when you love someone, you know what you got to do a lot of? Oh my God, talking. Oh, when you love someone, you gotta do so much talking. We were doing restorative circles before I knew what a restorative circle was. We were talking and we were digging into feelings. How do you feel? How did this feel? We were going to the root of things. So we had a black girl and a Latino girl fighting, and they were fighting all along. We found out they were fighting over a black dude. But it wasn't just that. It was that all the black dudes always chose the Latina girls. So now we really, when that came out, it was like 7 p.m. I was like, we're never leaving. We're never leaving. We're going to continue this conversation. This is going to be a weekend retreat. And then it was like, the black girl is like, all the black boys in here only want to date the Latino girls. And then you're like, oh, and that fight and that conversation led to like a year-long men and women's group breaking up. Black and Latino separated, then together, like having this conversation about this internalized racism and all of this good stuff and bad stuff. But like, or we could have suspended the girls for fighting. we could have like, that bitch just broke the rule, you fought, you're kicked out.
Yeah.
We spent a year and a lot of crying to figure out, oh, there's a lot of self-hate happening right here.
And that's all really to say that people understand that conversations around race and power and privilege, all of those for black educators, white educators to go in our 444 mindset, we're all screwed in that way because we don't have the tools to properly facilitate these conversations. Like even for the facilitators who get paid to come out sometimes, like we still act with things in an intellectual way, right? Where we don't really have the skill set. We always talk about like how do you build your toolkit with the things necessary to really do this work. That is something we all have to be mindful of. Like how do we actually equip ourselves with that?
And then also knowing that sometimes we'll never have enough tools. One of the things and one of the reasons why I like doing work with Erin, and if we could, we would do all our work together, because sometimes, especially in our, I just can't. My can't meter has runneth over, and I need to sit down and let Erin talk to the white folks, because I'm emotionally drained and harmed and hurt, and I can't be, no, Erin, go ahead, talk to them. I'm gonna go get a sandwich, and I'll come back. And then there's the flip side where me and another colleague who was white, we were having this conversation, cross-ethnic, and we tried to do something really important and then debrief it? Nope. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take all the people of color and go outside, and you take all the white people and go over there, and let's debrief it. And then in that space, people were able to debrief and talk. And then even when we came back and tried to debrief it, they were like, nope. And so then him and I just, we had a real conversation in front of them. We said, all right, so we're gonna have the kind of conversation we would have without y'all here.
Right.
We're just gonna keep it real and talk about it.
Right.
And so then we debriefed, and people were like, oh shit. Like we just kept it, like, we kept it real.
And for white people, that's really just like really pushing yourself to be that anti-racist white person, because in that work, like especially like with you and Aaron, by virtue of your whiteness, of your white feminineness, there are certain places that you're gonna have access to, certain conversations that you'll be privy to that she won't. But just that notion of, but knowing that you are a down-ass, anti-racist chick doing this work, right? Like that's how we really get both sides on the table, because it'll always be the black people need work done, the white people need work done. The only way we bring that together is if we really have people.
And if we're both working as anti-racist,
exactly,
right? Because she could be partnered with me and I could be in a situation with black folk and be like, I think you're too hard. I think you're too hard on that. I don't know. I can't really work with her.
Experience this summer with that person I was telling you about. But you know what I noticed, and this is something that Khalil and I talk about a lot, and what I know that from the first time we started working together, that I think what people are asking about when they're coming up to me afterwards is that they're asking really about the joy and the laughter. That's what they're asking about.
The chemistry.
When Vincent is talking about this deep intellectualization, right? The human being is holistic, and this is something you and I talk about all the time also. Like somebody asked me once, do you do circles with your family? We do circles with our family. Like the circle attempts to address the four aspects of the human, right? The physical and intuitive, the mental, intellectual, and the spiritual and the emotional, right? Those four aspects that we're human beings are holistic. And when you're with your family, you're eating. Managing the physical self. You're asking Aunt Kate about the knee surgery that she had. You're getting everybody's happy. I got a big Irish family. The whiskey starts flowing. People are tears, and they're talking about Yates. We're managing the spiritual. And all I mean by spiritual is being a part of something greater than yourself, which is just the nature of being in a family at all. You're a part of something greater than yourself. So you don't need to circle up with the family. Those aspects of the holistic self are cared for. And when we enter into this, talk about building muscles, all we do in this society that values the mental intellectual so much, it's like we got, like this thing is like so heavy with muscle. It's
can't even carry, our bodies can't even carry it.
Cannot even carry it, and then everything else is starving. It's starving, and so to laugh with you, for you and I or for people to hear us argue about Kanye, for people to hear us argue about trauma and resilience, and to hear us laugh with each other in the same breath, knows that you can have these conversations, and it doesn't have to be so fucking lonely. Because it's so fucking sad. To stay in that intellectual place makes me feel cold. Literally, like I'll feel I need a sweater.
White people in. That is what white people force us all to do.
And that's
they don't want black kids moving around, dancing around, talking around your feelings. You can't do this, you can't do that, because you just want to be like, take away your feelings. I did a session at the NYC Men Teach Kickoff, and this guy was like, this teacher, we were talking about all of these social things, and he said, well, I teach my kids how to be objective, I was like, stop. What you mean objective? Whose objectivity? I have a different experience than you. My objectivity is in a different place. I said, no, it's not in objectivity. It is inquiring. You teach them how to pose questions. You teach them how to say, boom, this is what I have. Now what do I want to know? And he was like, oh. I said inquiry based. He said, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, stop using objectivity. Objectivity is a tool of white supremacy.
That's right.
Objectivity says, come right here. Inquiry says, what else? I want to know more.
Doing work from your mind instead of your spirit. I think that was like the main thing you imparted to me with spirit of intimacy.
Spirit of intimacy.
It was like really understanding like the communal piece and like that the way in which the work that we do is really lacking if it's devoid of spirit. Like this is soul work. If you're not ready to do that,
we talk about it. Aaron and I are like, listen, the big hurdle is that we want to do spirit work in schools.
That's right.
And there's a separation supposedly in church and state because people think of church work.
That's right.
We're just trying to connect as humans and do spirit work. But listen, we only got a few more minutes in this podcast. Because we are
Sad
over.
for
And we go into the trap.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm coming back to the kids.
We go into the trap. Our last
supposed to start with the
section.
trap.
No, we started perfect. We started perfect. Listen, I follow the spirit.
I'm so glad you did. And you know what? It's a perfect segue to the trap.
To the trap. So wait,
perfect segue.
let's give a little background. So Vincent and I did and are continuing to do. We're doing this workshop at the ASCD Empower 18 conference this spring.
Shout out Cree for that.
Called the Pedagogy of Trap, where and I'll let Vincent break down the pedagogy of trap because listen, he really crafted it, and I just put like pedagogy to it, right? We was
collaboration.
Yeah, it was perfect. I was like,
Brings a tear to my eye.
we watching Vice about the trap. I'm watching the Vice videos. Like I was like, what is the trap? Who's in the trap? How are we trapping? Right? And so, Vince, talk about trap. Talk about pedagogy, and then I'll tell you how me and Aaron got into it. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it initially for us was we thought for the Colonizing There, which was a conference that we were at a few months back, and when initially, so she like even when she's like, I added the pedagogy, she's like, you want to present with me? I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that, right? And so we sat and we thought about first just having like the bombest presentation at the conference, because that's just what we like to do. ASCD, we coming for you. And really just thinking about our students, right? Like these young black and brown men and the way in which their lived experiences, right? Like we don't honor that, we don't speak about that, we don't even touch on that. And so thinking for like educators, pedagogues of a certain age, of white pedagogues, like how do we make that connection? He was like, yo, let's look at the trap music. Like we want to know, how do we look at black boys, how do we try to understand some of their realities, how do we bring that into spaces that can be intellectual? We got right to the music. We were like, what was it, Migos first?
Yep, Bad and Bougie. Started with that. But even our intro to it, which I think it was your idea, our intro to it was
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash. And how his music was trap.
I was like sending your little text messages about Johnny Cash at Fulton Prison.
Yes!
And how white folks love white trap music. We love white trap music.
Yeah, and that was a lot of it, like the way in which those messages play out. So at the conference, a woman is like, wait, so you're not saying that
Johnny Cash trap music?
Like this, he just escaped from prison. He shot him.
His lyrics.
His
lyrics,
of what he's experiencing, he's giving you this in the music, but we idolize that, right? Like that is a classic song to us. And then we look at this music, and especially, I think a lot of it for us was that as educators, even black people, like we look at trap music, some iterations of trap music, we're like, that shit is a little sketchy, right?
Yeah.
And so in that, we write the people off that occupy those spaces. Like we look at the kids who like that, this lean, drinking infused music, and we're like, I don't want that little kid in my class. So now we lose kids. And so how do we were really looking like, how do we bring everybody in, and how do we engage and interact with all of these realities through the music, and more than just even music, because I think as we prepare to do this workshop at a few other places, the larger thought is always looking at like the cultural piece, right? So even more than just the trap that is displayed in the music, but like through the media outlets that these kids, like you have young kids making YouTube movies a mile a minute nowadays, like really just looking at all of like the commercial pieces that they are engaging with, and really how do we understand kids, and so pedagogy of trap was born.
And then also just thinking about how I'm big on, and take this how you want, how we help our students commodify their talent and their, and because what happens is, and I found an article that said, black kids are the #1 content creators on social media, but white people are the #1 beneficiary financially of the content that they make. So it's like, how do we help them commodify these stories? So I remember Chris Emden talking about while he was finishing his dissertation, he was listening to trap music, and he, like every time he was in the library and it was 2:00 in the morning and he wanted to give up, hip hop saved him. Hip hop was like, you had to get into that vibe. And so how do we as black educators deny that this music, the #1 listened to music in this country, if not the world, but I know it was the #1 listened to, how does this music affect our students and ourselves? Like right now, Cardi B Cardi because we gotta talk about Gucci.
That's
But
right.
Cardi B is killing it, and it's not just trap music. It's just music of the culture. You know, it's Jay-Z's 444. It's how, you know, white people separate music from our, like, music. It fashions my whole entire life. It brings me to everything. But then quickly, Erin, listen, this trap star here, she was like, Kalila, you haven't listened to 2 Chainz? What is it, Pretty Girls or something? Trap? I was like, no, I'll download it on Tidal. And then 2 weeks ago, last week, she was like, listen to Gucci's album. I'm like, Tidal, download Gucci Man.
I'm sure that Kalila just said Gucci Man.
Gucci Mane. Gucci Mane. Listen.
I would never correct you.
No, you can correct me, Gucci Mane. Because you know prior to Erin telling me to listen to Gucci's album, I never listened to a whole album. It's so funny, I'm on the phone with Vincent, I'm like, okay, I'm going to download the album. Oh God, how many tracks are there? Oh,
Gucci is one of the most prolific artists of all time, too. Like, I just like to imagine you with like 10,000 songs. Gucci? Oh God!
I was literally like, oh, I need to listen to this on my train ride to the Bronx. These are a lot of songs.
She was like, yeah, so we're gonna speak about both albums. I'm like, yeah, I gotta listen to it. Like, I love the singles. If you catch me in the club at the right time, Gucci is definitely the savior of the night. But 15 tracks in, I was like, oh, I gotta power through this. Because I love trap music, but I was like,
Alright, but Gucci is one of the, we think of him as one of the founders of trap, right?
Yes.
Like Gucci,
Yes.
Jeezy,
Yes.
even T.I. I
Yeah.
feel like.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
Have you watched the
I'm about to
Viceland?
say,
You gotta watch the Viceland episode on track.
yeah, on
I
trap.
should
It's like the whole,
Yeah, it's
like,
really
actually
good.
running the debate for T.I. right now is Spirit. He's like, I started trap music. My first album was trap music. This is just how it's going. But yeah,
But
Gucci is definitely prolific.
Gucci,
in that
T.I. and
way.
Jeezy.
Yes.
So it's fitting that we would
And
start.
I have mad T.I. albums, so you know my bias.
Oh, no, Gucci good. Just
No.
like 10 tracks.
I can listen to like 5 T.I. albums.
I know, that's what I'm
press
saying,
play and be
yeah.
like, hey,
Well, then, what you're talking about is actually part of what makes Gucci amazing, right? So Gucci would he was so prolific and he was making, and exactly, he'd have these crazy bangers, and as soon as something was gonna blow up for him, he'd end up back incarcerated.
in the
So
trap.
he could never end up like cresting on completing
Yeah.
whatever his mission was. But you listen to Gucci and you listen to those, even just think of like the bangers, like think of like Lemonade right away. Like what is it that we all loved about Gucci? They were like nursery rhymes.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like even the kids on the hook on Lemonade. And what I
Gucci was
love,
high as fuck.
well, Gucci was
That's
hot as fuck.
I go back to the
Absolutely.
like the Gucci's hot.
He always sounded like, now he's not childish, but he's childlike.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, not childish at all.
The theme of this particular episode is let the children live. And
Yeah.
right now, the reason I'm so happy we're talking about, because finally it feels like Gucci is
Gucci
living.
gets
That's
to
a
live.
fact, yeah.
Gucci gets to live. Gucci wasn't, you couldn't be a good Gucci friend, you couldn't be a Gucci
Oh, yeah.
girl, you couldn't be a Gucci family member, because Gucci wasn't good to you. And he's
No.
like, now I get to, he talks about the world
That's
like
life.
opening up. He has
Well,
life now, sober Gucci.
But I was about to say what led to that sobering up.
Sobriety for sure.
Sobering up.
He talks about like those years. I mean, he was so sad, and I heard this definition of happiness one time, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm thinking about the kids and the young people at schools. The best definition of happiness I ever heard is when the inside matches the outside. Right? When who you really are gets to match with how you get to move in the world. Right? That's happiness. And you could hear in Gucci's music early on that like who he was, the inside wasn't really matching the outside. And you were like rooting for him. You could hear the drugs taking their toll, but he wanted to be childlike and like wonder
And
in the world.
free
and free.
and happy.
You could hear it. It was, not like I was talking to a friend who was like saying like Kurt Cobain is starting to gain some popularity in like the hip hop world because it was a similar thing. Like you watching this person waste away that you love and you just like wanna take care of
Amy
him.
Winehouse.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think even what's so beautiful about it with Gucci is that in hip hop, in trap, that whole space where like the drug and the feud, that whole piece of it is so strong. The hip hop community is loving to see Gucci win at this level, right?
Win.
Yeah, like it's
Win.
Everybody would love to see joy.
Yeah. I mean, his album comes out. I mean, his
Atlanta. That was the name of the store. I'm like, Gucci, I love you so much. I'm so
Gucci
right
was interviewed. Oh my God, who was it? He's interviewed by some random white dude. I was like, Gucci, really? Like I'm looking at him now, and I didn't make it through all the album. I ain't gonna lie, because I wasn't in the right
Which
space.
album has like 14 albums?
The last one, boo. The last one. That's all I'm going to. The last one. Right?
And that was like a mixtape you went and got. I was like, ooh, this was not.
I just needed to like be in a better space, but I am gonna get his biography. Like I do want to read, and I do like seeing him win. And it's funny because like you can just see in his face how sober he is, and how happy he is, and how productive he is. And this is all the time we have left. And how engaged with life he is, and like I want to read the biography because I would probably bring that into the classroom.
Yeah. Right. You brought a new style of music to the world. Yeah. Like that's Black excellence.
Yeah.
And we heard even the albums have their ups and downs and all that kind of stuff, but like I so root for him, and I think he's really important. Like we need to pay attention to Gucci.
I think one of the things that I took away from the Vice doc on trap was this idea of, like you go down the block and you trap. There's one way in and one way out. And I think Gucci was like, nah, there's another way out.
Yeah.
There's another way out. There's another way to engage in this world. And I think one of the other parts of trap music, and I know you were telling me, like, how much the artists are numbing themselves or talking about numbing themselves.
Yeah.
Future, and I love Future.
Lil Wayne was in the hospital this week.
I know you were telling me that.
And especially like a lot of that music is like when we sing, and especially for the people that pass judgment on it, a lot of that music is escapism, right? Like in its purest form, right? Like we don't look, and that's like that larger, and we don't have enough time for that, but that's like to that larger piece of Black men with trauma and the way in which they deal with these spaces, the way in which our communities don't really allow for these hurt men to try to figure that out. Because when I listen to trap music, even when I think about the pieces in that music that I connect to from my own experiences, it was the pieces that spoke to pain and trauma, and the way in which you tried to cope with that through lyrics and songs.
Do you remember our first conversation that started this idea for the segment too? We were talking about trap music and just even whiteness learning to listen and hear human dignity, if it doesn't speak the same language, right, that it's used to. But we were talking about putting on trap music and feeling not unlike what Dr. Ender was talking about, feeling like you could cry down, like you could die right now
and be good. Be good.
So this
I'd be like, Cardi, Lou.
You're soldier
if you want to.
I have to like walk on and I'm like, bring the bus. It's time to go.
I listened to trap music.
I listened to my first year doing this work at NYU. I would always listen to Rick Ross before I went on.
Millions.
My coworkers would be like, how the hell are you listening to Rick Ross? Aren't you gonna be angry? I'm like, nah, I'm gonna be happy. I'm about to go in there and kill it, because I needed to also engage in that bravado. I needed to get myself up. I needed to be ready for whatever these white folks was gonna come. And so you connected to the trauma and the pain. I connected to the bravado and the like, I'm gonna do this shit.
Fearlessness.
Like the fear, like I'm gonna do it. You can't stop me. And when I need that, right, I still go to Rick when I need like that fearlessness in my heart. I be like, y'all think y'all fucking with me? I gotta write this email.
That doesn't give them confidence to take on the classroom and the school day.
So at this point,
to be continued.
Inaugural
to be continued
podcast. I mean, we got like a 2-hour podcast. Who's listening this long? So we want to thank you for listening. We want you to check us all out at creednyc.com, and we will be back next month, because for the time being, we hitting you once a month. You let us know if you want to hear from us more often than that. And so with that, I say good night.
Night.
Hold it down with people.
I ain't on top of the world, I flow through it like an axis. In fact, stay intact, shit, I do it just for practice. Now, peep how I flex, got the goddess complex, remain the goddess unless I'm too vexed to chin check. And I channel anytime I rhyme, damn, I just can't recline. My people in the heavy bond is some dire straits. Half past latent resurrection awaits, we just a quarter to greatness. See, I'm about restoring glory, my people try was gory, they can't ignore me. I rep the whole story from the ashes of the universe, emerge with a surge of words inspired by the slurs slung at my ancestors. Back at Manchester, I let my hurt fester and swallow the skeptics. No antiseptic, I'm blessed with the foresight of the elders. I got the right to rebel against a system that contributes to my anguish. Go hard, not conservative, got no alternative. You watch this empress, you gon' learn some shit. We tryna make black history, they tryna make blacks mystery. This shit ain't history, we tryna make black history. And they just wanna make blacks history. Word, we tryna make black history. And they just wanna make blacks history.